Hi, everybody. We had two or three questions coming in, and I'll just look for them. Hope everybody is doing well. And on this, you know what? I don't even know the date. I think it's the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken.
23rd.
Yeah. I think also, if you don't mind, Maureen, plug this back in. Sorry. Yeah, great. So this is a question from Toshi again, and says, "Thank you for answering my question this evening." And that was previously, of course. One thing that I took notice of was your comment, paraphrasing here, if I understood it correctly, that you wish that language would describe higher states in a way that would be common across all religious experiences. I did say that, Toshi, but also I included science and anything else so that there could be a common relationship with a language that would make some sense. In the old philosophical backgrounds, metaphysics was the angle that could be used. Of course, that's a complicated thing too, because that went right back to Plato and Socrates and Aristotle and uh, various other philosophers. And of course, there were philosophers who agreed and philosophers who didn't agree. This is basically how difficult a language can be created. Uh, in that vein, and this is the vein of only being in religions, of course, but um, philosophically and scientifically, there can be a link with higher states, what to call it, and how can we call it something that doesn't annoy religious folk, and how can religious folk call it something that doesn't perturb scientific folk? You see, that's what I was aiming at there. Anyway, in that vein, I was struck by a description by a writer that Hinduism and Buddhism were fundamentally different. Since Hinduism stresses being one with the divine, while Buddhism strove for a state of nothingness, which in face value seems to be at odds with each other. It does seem to be at odds. However, whoever was talking about was talking about the Vedanta. And there is a definite disturbance between Vedantic folks, theoretical folks, and they do talk about the divine. It's a fact. Using a language that relates to other states, because we don't know what to call it that would be comfortable with everybody, once again. But those who have engaged in Hinduism, with this process of energy, or kundalini in Hindu terms. In Buddhist terms, that would be a state of nothingness or non-state. But let's get back to the Hindu. Those who have actually engaged with kundalini, what they mean, they don't talk like the Vedantics. They experience a relationship with emptiness, a concept that often Buddhists call the non-self, or the empty self, or being in alignment with nothingness, emptiness. In a relationship with the those that I've met who are involved and engaged with the experience of this Kundalini background. Hinduism uses that word. Some Buddhists even use that word. It's energy moving up the spine or up the front or up the sides to link up and then go through various stages of that very link up. Doesn't sound complicated enough, does it? But what happens with the personalized mental facility and emotional facility gets a little complicated because there are words, again, that talk about these things, but not always compliant with each other in terms of points of view from different religious backgrounds or philosophical backgrounds, Indian philosophy. But what happens is, as I have been told and am in agreement with, that the mental facility that's personalized, our intellectual prowess, engages with another state, and there's communication with that higher state through the personality's silent modality, mental modality. So how does that seem to form? It means that the internal emotional or mental mind that we are so used to quiets right down. It's as if there's nothing in the head at all. Oh yeah, it can come back reflexively, emotionally, when you're in kind of an intense mode. But in a normal mode, for that kind of individual, there is an empty in the mind, in the head. Just if we pause, nothing is there. They don't call it the state of nothingness, call it a state of silence. And they keep it secret because, as things go, if you talk about a bunch of stuff, like we do, it becomes theory. And then if you know that theory, you think you know that quiet space, and you don't. This was a Hindu background. It was such that they would not talk about something that could be used in a context that related directly to the personality state or the importance and value of the individual. It was automatically considered valuable, and there was something that was very important in that consideration. Why? When they were quiet in their mind, they could talk to one another without moving their lips. This is a rare thing. It's when energy has come up into the crown center and you've gone through 2 or 3 stages of it. And then your mental reactive mind, reflexive mind, has a tendency in your normal state to be silent. We're not too keen on that concept too much here in the West because we like to, let's say, engage with others as if we know something. This is difficult for us to understand. It would be difficult for us to experience for a short time. We would have to understand that that was a phase of development beyond the cultivation of that emotional set that becomes mental. We construct things with our thinking mode, often emotional, mental, and because it's in the head. We look at it you can look at it that way. And instead of that, there is an expression of an idea that drops, and you can perceive it dropping into the head. Drops there. Later on, it becomes more automatic, but also in the early stages of this, the personality brings up its importance again and expresses itself quite legitimately like it did before. In other words, if you have an idea that drops into your head, it's your idea. There's a personalization that is there, and you're valued according to that idea from your own self. And you project that literally as if people should really value you, because that happens in the Hindu, and by the way, in the true Buddhist state of nothingness. The focus is not on the personality being important. What is important is the expression of something that may be valuable in the process of development of others. This is something that the West has great difficulty with, unless there is an aspect of compassion within the individual where she or he attempts to figure out and understand how people engage with each other, because it is an aspect of themselves and how they engage with themselves. What's different in that point of expression is that there's competition between one another in that personalization. In the other, there isn't, because there's linking up with a higher state. Give you an example, bad one maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 people get together and they're trying to understand something because all they have is their background to relate to things with. So they talk to each other and engage with each other by looking inside their head to see if anything drops in. Oh boy, we don't do that one very fast. What we do quickly is to come up with an idea that is different than somebody else's. So therefore, we can be recognized as very important. This is what happens in our world. Think about this. The very act of thinking about this helps you to understand that this is what we do. So these questions, of course, this is not a question from Toshi. This is a question for everybody. There are similarities to many Eastern orientations, but the language changes. One appears to be more religious. Other one appears not to be, because they say, no, this is not about a religion. This is about just how things can happen. I totally agree with that. I'm just going to, sorry, I had something come over my face here, and there we go. Sorry about that. So you can see the complexity of language. But if two people, one Buddhist, one Hindu, one perhaps a hermit, the Christian background, used to meditating constantly, a Taoist who is linking up with an higher state, a Muslim who is doing the same thing, a Hebrew who is doing the same thing. all of those. A scientist who's doing the same thing, pure scientist. Gosh, there you go with definitions again. Very difficult. A philosopher who is doing the same thing. I really don't care what you want to call these titles. If they all come together and truly are doing the same thing, they will link up together at a higher state. They won't care who comes up with an idea because they know that there's the possibility of 7 or 8 beings who are looking to engage with what, I'll say it, appears in their head. And they are not afraid to speak it out to the best of their ability. Sometimes that's difficult. And what they are doing is engaging as if they're in one mind, linking subtly together, not caring about the personalization that would be automatic in another or others. Then you have the linking of minds, which appears in our Western philosophical point of view as nonsense sometimes. This is why it's so difficult, and I can understand the question, to talk about these things, because various readers or writers, philosophy, coming from different directions, still aligned with the personalization structure, which is common in our developing beings, us, you and I, then you come at it from a different perspective. You must come at it from that perspective, even though it's not as real as we believe, but come at it from that perspective until you can do something else. The trick in this is when you can do something else, you know better that it's coming from the personalization than coming from another state. This is a different level of knowing. And you will likely say dumb things like, that just dropped into my head. I didn't think about that. That was just there. And I saw that it was just there. Just because it's my head doesn't necessarily mean it's my constructed idea. This is at the root of this concept of nothingness and so-called divine. So-called divine, wow. What I really mean is life on other states, in other states, through other states. And we are legitimately focused very physically. Physical includes the mental facility, our sense of that's not right, this is more right than that, kind of emotionally affected based on the sensate relationship that we protect as we grow from childhood into adulthood and into and through adulthood. This is a different kind of a state. So what I was trying to get at was engaging with words that could explain that an awful lot better than I can. Or than I should say, helping others to understand it better than I have the words to do so perfectly. There's no perfectly in this at our stage of the game. Do what you can. The other thing is experiencing that is different than dialoguing with it based on what we read or what we figure out or somebody else reads or figures out. So we have a ways to go. Doesn't mean we're bad folks. It means we are moving in a direction towards understanding something beyond what we can understand now through experience, as opposed to memorization and speaking the words of other people. This is not so simple, not so easy. Thank you so much, Toshi, for trying to help me clear that up a little bit. Whether I did or not, that's another story. And Toshi does say, where are they? Could it be different yogis where one has different paths to the same angle? It's kind of different. The path is the same. The words are all different, often different. Therefore, the comprehension would relate to the beliefs that we have within us and what we can handle beyond what we already feel is more truthful relative to us. This is an experience that I've tried to explain by talking about some of those folks that I've been so fortunate to meet who are able to do exactly what I'm talking about. And they were Buddhist, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, you name one, Hebrew, Taoist, and other shamans as well that we don't interact with. I mean, literally, Aboriginal shamans engaging at that level. However, not everyone who says they can are. And this is something that a lot of energy work will help. It will build a construct. If you can be honest with yourself, within you, a construct within you, where you start to notice things differently than you could before. Taking one piece at a time, continuing, until our personalizations are there, but they're not out front holding on to themselves so that nothing else can be noted. This is very difficult to explain, so I'm sorry, Josh, I've done the best I can with that one. And if you come at it from a different angle, I'll try something else. Okay, now there is one from Natalie, if I can find it. Okay. Remember, try and think these through the best you can. Why does the Lord's Prayer say, lead us not into temptation? I usually rephrase it myself, but I was wondering why the original wording is put that way, as if the highest would want to lead us there. Questions tell a lot about people. Highest, let me try and answer that question. Let me speak it first. Is it that the energy will go where we insist on? In that case, shouldn't it be lead us not too much into temptation, whatever you want? Work with things the way you can understand them. And later on, you begin to understand differently. Lead us not into temptation. Look, remember the idea, Natalie. It's an idea that there's an expression of loving that allows you to do what you believe you need to do to be you, the way you think you need to be you, to be recognized by yourself and others as whatever your name is. Now, I'm not talking to Natalie only, I'm talking to all of us. So the prayer was put out there, it seems to me, to help us to understand that you're asking for help, not to follow the trail that you've already put out there, because you've already figured out what you think you need to do. So it says, lead us not into temptation, meaning we are naturally physical beings. We are naturally physical emotional beings. We are naturally mentally, emotionally, physically focused personality beings. And if you don't believe that one, try engaging with an idea that you already have come up with the right solution for. Try engaging differently with that and see what happens. Just a little exercise. Very difficult to do. You will assert, since you're thinking about it, that how you think about something is absolutely exactly right. Because you're defending the value already set down internally, externally, with respect to how you think you need to think and can think. Nothing wrong with that. So the prayer is saying, don't let me do that. Because that's a temptation to hold me in a position beyond my understanding and growing into, they say divine, but higher state, a higher understanding, a deeper level of something that I can't figure out just yet. So in this David poem in the Psalms, to me, it says, lead me not into temptation, because I will be tempted to think the way I know things are already. And that love will help you do that until you notice something slightly different. That's development, that's growing. Understanding deeper than what is on a natural, normal surface level thought to be true. Now, we don't like what I just said. I understand that. Why in heaven's name would we ever like anybody telling us we're only dealing with stuff on the surface? We wouldn't. So, in expressing something of that nature, looking at the symbolic or metaphorical relationship that it might have with you, you're basically saying there, don't let me drive myself in a direction that I am certain is perfect. when there are so many directions out there? That should give me a hint that maybe there are different ways to look at how I hold myself and my personality's views to be totally correct at all times if it defends and puts me forward as valuable. This is a natural tendency. Everybody's got this to some degree. So, in a very metaphorical way, this guy is only a shepherd, not well educated. Not well educated, not educated at all, is sitting out there in a pasture someplace with a bunch of sheep around him, attempting the very best that he can to write poetry because he has these things coming into his head. Anybody ever says that people who don't have an education can't link up with a higher state, they're talking nonsense. But never mind that. Here he is, and he comes up with this metaphorical thing. He writes it down. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I think he must have had memory. He may not have been able to write at the time. But memory. He had to count his sheep. He had to know exactly what was going on all the time. He had attention. He had strong attending focus. One could say, I don't know. Unless I was one of the sheep there. Who knows?
That's the 23rd Psalm.
But it's the 23rd Psalm. The 23rd Psalm. And I would say that it's an interesting one. Try and read it from a metaphorical point of view as a personality, trying to understand yourself. And it will give you a number of hints. Well, I wish you well with that one. Here's one. How are we doing for time? Okay. This one is from Sonia Nigam in Ottawa. I've been thinking about caring. I've heard you say that it's so important that we care. I have also heard you say that energy from that universal life force is love and is loving. I just said it again. Loving in the sense that it's trying to help us to understand us beyond what our culture and our relationship with our personality allows us to do. It's my view. And we often misunderstand the notions of love and loving because of our training and family background. That's the notions of us. So my question is, why is caring so important? And how is caring different from love and loving? It's really not. But there are many phases with respect to loving, caring. Caring is just a word that softens down loving. Some people can't utter loving because it's, to them, they have a very idealized version of what love is, or they don't really know about love that can be trusted in our world. Trusting is a very difficult thing. At the same time, they can use the word caring, and that makes them feel as if they're loving. So don't get hung up on words. And then as soon as I speak those words, I know it's so easy to get hung up on words. But the issue here about loving, again, I'll say it, is that if I'm right in this, and I may or may not be, that aspect of loving from that higher state is like helping us to continue on the way we think we need to, so that we can see what that is and not necessarily always agree with it, and look for other options. And this is really difficult for us. As a growing being, we still have that family background. And it's not only family, it's our training. Cultural training is really strong. And we have to have it. It helps us come at life from an angle, just an angle. And there are many who come at it from different angles. We automatically go with that one. They're right, they're wrong. We're right, we're right, we're wrong. And some will not think that anybody else is right other than themselves. And some will always think they're the only ones that are wrong. There's so many options. But understanding this idea of loving is really interesting. I had a friend, a Buddhist friend, and he said, in looking at this flower, what can we, and it was just a flower, what can we ascertain? I said, oh boy, you're not a Zen Buddhist. He said, no, you know what I'm talking about. I said, okay. So you look at the flower. And what happens with the flower is this. It emits energy. It was right because you're looking at it. Your two eyes are lined with it. It emits energy and brings energy to your face, and your face will tingle. And sometimes your heart will tingle or your neck will tingle. But you're linking up with the blooming of a plant. Well, you're not supposed to talk like that. So I said, hope you don't ask too many people this kind of question. So we both laughed because we knew each other before, a long, long time ago. And he was wanting to know if I could still remember that engagement with energy that is in every form. Remembering means it doesn't remember, it's not a memory. It's an experience. Well, big deal. All of you out there who are normally listening to this have heard me talking about mirroring before. Some of you, especially in Scotland, in Glasgow, we went to a beautiful art gallery. And as I've told most of you, by bringing your attention outward, about 6 feet away from a piece of art, try to do the Renaissance period more than anything else. But because the throat's in Renaissance, so, and the brow. So you reach out to about 3 or 4 or 6 inches from the painting. Calculate your own millimeters, if you like, centimeters. And then you come back towards yourself. Quiet down this thing. You don't care what you think about that. Practicing, right? You don't care what you're thinking. All you care about is where the artist was in the opening of his chakra centers, Zephyra, at the time of painting. And by doing that, she or he will have an effect on you, even if it's been in the year 1240, 60, whatever. And you feel the energy from that article coming back into your body, into your energetic form, because you've been practicing opening that awareness. And you begin to perceive the artist. And if you calm down and not get excited, it will spread through you. And you'll notice the chakras literally from X number of years ago, which are still in that painting. And it will stimulate your system to open in a different place because you couldn't do that before. And that's an act of love, real caring. Sorry, I'm using that word again. Around an interaction that relates to enabling another to grow internally in a broader manner than what they were able to do before. Well, that sounds a little weird, but in the world of energetic perception or higher states, one could say, or different states, because you can learn how to do that and still have a coarse attitude towards other people. In other words, you're the only person who's any good and all the rest of them they don't really figure too much. That's a dilemma with that's a non-caring about others, but a very large caring about yourself. We have that to deal with. And so some of the ideas around trying to be aware of how you are inside by watching how you express externally and learning how to soften it down. Not eradicate. That's not within your capacity. If you soften it down, you'll start to notice and you will be training yourself to help you be more open to perceiving beyond what you can perceive now. And this is a very gentle way because you're attempting not to judge yourself because it doesn't help. Or to elevate yourself because that doesn't help either. What it does, it increases the personalization and the vulnerability that goes with it about not being able. And everyone is capable. Learning how to do this quietly helps you in a manner that allows you to recognize those things in you, but it also helps you to understand better another individual who, by the way, does things relative to their personality and their internal growth, cultural backgrounds, whatever it may be, the same as you do. So you begin to recognize there's a strange kind of understanding people often call compassion that lies within that modality, within that attempt. And that increases. An allowance within yourself to soften you down because you become compassionate with respect to yourself. If you're judgmental about how you do things, then that increases the judgment about things. It's not helpful. No matter how right you think you are, that rightness is literally involved with that loving of the image that you've already created. It's not a negative thing. It's what happens here on these levels. It's just how we tend to be. That flow within us will help us to see that better. If we can allow ourselves to be okay with seeing it. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but it is so loving, caring, compassionate for us, that flow. And none of what you call it is going to offend me, but it may offend you, whatever we call it, because we have ascertained, we assert things about what this word should be and why it should be that way and all the rest of it. We do that because we are protecting our relationship with ourselves. I'm not talking about anybody editing my book. It needs editing. I am talking about our relationship with how we defend ourselves. And that will not go away, but it will slip into our sight better. And maybe we can, over time, soften it. As we soften it, those tools that we use to protect ourselves they get less used. And that leaves an opening there. So I wish you all well with caring, loving, and with understanding these wondrous things that have been written by some people who already are engaging with these states or did engage with some of these states. How are we doing? Okay, it's about 10:02. So what I'm going to do is, I think what we can do is meditate. And I'll try and find some music. We'll meditate for about 15 minutes to 60 minutes. Let's see. Okay, here we go. See you later. Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding on your own. And thanks for the questions, everybody. Have a good evening.